Hello everyone and welcome to the Sutra reading part 2. And so for this part, I'll be going into how the Buddha was teaching the 4 factors that leads one into overcoming all the bad karma and replacing it with all the wholesome ones. So just repeating what the Buddha stated to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Maitreya, he said, "O Maitreya Bodhisattva Mahasattva, if you possess 4 factors, the misdeeds you have committed and accumulated will be overcome." What are these 4? The action of repentance, antidotal action, the power of restraint, and the power of support. The action of repentance is to feel intense remorse for any non-virtuous action you have committed. Antidotal action is to put great effort into virtuous actions once you have committed a non-virtuous action. The power of restraint is to make a pledge and thereby refrain from any similar action. And then the power of support is to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha, and not to forsake the mind of awakening. By relying on these powerful forces, you will be immune to misdeeds. The sutra teaching the 4 factors can be read in many different ways and has many different interpretations. Today, I will be using the humanistic Buddhism perspective in conjunction with the Noble Eightfold Path. Humanistic Buddhism is the tradition that I practiced in Fukwangshan Monastery when I was a monk in Taiwan. And for me, it is the most practical way to study and practice Buddhism because it's about how to apply it in our everyday lives. This is why I think it makes most sense to explain this sutra with the Noble Eightfold Path from the perspective of humanistic Buddhism. To provide some background of the Noble Eightfold Path, it describes the path towards complete liberation from suffering, as per the 4 noble truths. The first noble truth is that suffering exists. The second noble truth is the cause of suffering. The third noble truth is that liberation can be attained. And the 4th noble truth is the path leading to cessation of suffering. The Noble Eightfold Path has 8 limbs, namely right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This sutra talks about the 4 factors, which is also right effort, also known as right diligence or right practice. The 8 limbs of the Noble Eightfold Path can be categorized by the 3 studies, which are morality, meditation, and wisdom. Under morality, we have to practice right action, right speech, and right livelihood. Right action just means abiding in the precepts. Right speech is to speak wholesomely, to not tell lies, and to not have a double tongue. Right livelihood means to have a wholesome profession that doesn't inflict pain and suffering onto other people, whereas morality is cultivated through the body. Meditation is cultivated in the mind and consists of right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Right effort is the topic of this sutra, which we will go into later. Right mindfulness is being aware and present, being aware of the senses, of our thoughts and feelings, which means grounding our awareness in the present moment. Concentration is about single-pointed focus of the mind, so knowing how to abide the mind anywhere that we wish for an extended period of time. The 2 main types of meditation are mindfulness meditation, where we are just simply observing our senses, and concentration meditation, where we abide our concentration single-pointedly on the breath, on a mantra, on reciting a Buddha's name, or on an image. Then there is wisdom, which is the fruit of the practice of morality and meditation, which is right understanding and right thought. Right understanding means understanding reality as it is, which is abiding with the understanding of emptiness, of impermanence, non-self, and cause and effect. Right thought is knowing how to abide in wholesome thoughts, wholesome dharmas, moment to moment. So abiding in thoughts of generosity, patience, and compassion, as opposed to wrong thoughts such as anger, greed, jealousy, and delusion. These 8 limbs make up the Noble Eightfold Path, which is also known as the path towards liberation, and also known as the middle way. The reason why it is called the middle way is because they are free from extremities, free from attachment to the things that we like, as well as aversion towards the things that we hate, and we are abiding in the middle path, also known as the path of emptiness. So now we understand the Noble Eightfold Path and where right effort fits in the meditation aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path. Let's go back into the sutra and analyze right effort from the perspective of the sutra. When we practice right effort, there are 4 main factors to consider. The first one is to avoid any unwholesome deeds that we have been doing in the past. The second one is to prevent any unwholesome deeds that are yet to arise. The third one is to nurture the wholesome deeds that have already arisen. And the fourth one is to cultivate the wholesome deeds that are yet to arise. To apply the 4 factors of right effort to this sutra, the action of repentance is to feel intense remorse for any non-virtuous action you have committed. We can also interpret it to be the effort to prevent unwholesome qualities from arising within us. The best way to practice this factor is to observe the 5 precepts. Basically, the 5 precepts are the precepts that all Buddhist practitioners should abide by, which are no killing, no lying, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, and no intoxication of the mind. This is by far the most important step of the 4 factors, as it immediately protects oneself from creating bad karma now and in the future. It is also known as preventing the weed from growing within our garden of the mind. If we were to observe our jails and prison systems, most of the people who are sent there would have broken one of the 5 precepts. They may have killed someone, or they may have lied or committed fraud. They may have stolen. They may have practiced sexual misconduct, or they might have become overly intoxicated in the mind, which led to many bad things happening. So the first factor is about creating a strong foundation where we have a high level of standard that we abide in mentally and physically. The second factor, according to the sutra, is antidotal action, which is to put great effort into virtuous actions once you have committed a non-virtuous action. It is also known as the effort to avoid unwholesome qualities that have already arisen. So the first factor was about preventing any unwholesome habits from arising in the first place. The second one is learning how to deal with the bad habits that have already arisen. The best way to do that is to turn the 5 precepts mentioned before into an active practice. So instead of no killing, it is protect life. Instead of no lying, it is speak wholesome words. Instead of no stealing, it is practice generosity. Instead of no sexual misconduct, it is respect people's value. And finally, instead of no intoxication of the mind, it is cultivate wisdom and clarity of the mind. This is a very important practice because the best way to deal with negative habits is to replace it with wholesome ones. For example, if we have a habit of eating junk food, what are some healthy, delicious foods that we can use to replace it with? So it's not like we are refraining from eating altogether, we are just replacing it with delicious, yummy food. The same applies with any negative habits that we may have, like gambling, drinking, or smoking. Instead of just saying no to it, why don't we replace it with something that we actually enjoy, that we have a positive, healthy relationship with? This second step is also a very important practice because it helps us purify all our past bad karma and replace all our unwholesome deeds and habits into wholesome ones. This is also known as removing the weed within the garden of our mind. The first step is to prevent the weed from arising that haven't arisen, and the second step is to remove the weed that has already arisen. Now the third factor deals with the power of restraint, which is to make a pledge and thereby refrain from any similar action. It is also known as the effort to cultivate wholesome qualities that have not yet arisen. The best way to do that is to cultivate the 3 acts of goodness, namely do good deeds, speak good words, and think good thoughts. This is the best way to create merits and blessings, and for us to create joy and happiness for ourselves and the people around. The third step is about cultivating wholesome roots and produce good karma now and in the future. Within the garden of our mind, we are planting flower seeds. So this third step is about creating good, positive, wholesome habits on the level of speech, action, and thoughts. This includes doing good things for ourselves as well as doing good things for the people around. Good things for ourselves include exercising, eating healthy, getting plenty of rest, constantly learning and studying, practicing self-love, self-praise, and positive thinking. Good deeds that we can focus externally are things like helping our family and friends, giving words of praise, words of encouragement, words of inspiration, helping when someone is sad or upset, and overall creating a very positive, energetic, happy environment for ourselves and the people around. Now onto the fourth factor, which is the power of support. And this is to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and not to forsake the mind of awakening. By relying on such powers, you will be immune to misdeeds. On the level of right effort, this is the effort to nurture the wholesome qualities that have already arisen. In the fourth factor, the Buddha recommends that we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha as our power of support. This is also known as the three refuges. From the perspective of humanistic Buddhism, the Buddha represents the perfection of ourself. Most people see the Buddha as external to them, and so they pay homage and pay respect to an external Buddha, and that's fine. But in humanistic Buddhism, the practice revolves more around our inner Buddha and how to identify with the perfection of ourself. So by taking refuge in the Buddha, we are vowing to attain perfection of ourselves. Perfection, from a Buddhist perspective, means to cultivate all the wholesome virtues and attributes like generosity, patience, compassion, love and kindness, or to the maximum capacity that we can achieve. Dharma represents the wholesome practice and teachings, also known as the Buddha Dharma. And so taking refuge in the Dharma means that we are taking refuge in the truth, in what is wholesome and in what is good. The Sangha represents the community of positive influences, the community of monks and nuns, laymen and lay women. Here, the Sangha represents the positive influences that we should have more of in our life, that inspire us and help us become the best versions of ourselves. This final factor is about nurturing wholesome roots and accumulating good merits and blessings that we can then share with other people around. It is also known as watering the flowers from within the garden of our mind and tending to them, taking care of them and nurturing them. The reason why taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha is so important is so that we don't forsake the mind of awakening. A mind that's on the path to awakening and liberation and realization is one that's full of energy and insight, and that carries on to a lot of positive benefits and advantages for the self and other people, which in turn helps us nurture all the wholesome qualities that have already arisen. As a brief summary of right effort, all the unwholesome deeds that have already arisen, we avoid. All the unwholesome deeds that haven't arisen, we prevent. All the wholesome deeds that have already arisen, we nurture, and all the wholesome deeds yet to arise, we cultivate. From the perspective of the garden of the mind, we prevent the weed that hasn't arisen from arising. We remove the weed that has arisen. Then for the flowers and plants that haven't arisen, we plant the seeds for future growth. And for all the flowers and plants that have already arisen, we continue to water, tend, and take care of. This concludes part 2 of the sutra explanation. In the next video, we will go into summarizing the sutra and learning how to cultivate it in our everyday lives.